Let me quickly de-influence you right now. If you've been watching videos telling you that you need to perform a certain way for people to treat you like you have value, that's messed up. And I'll tell you why in about 30 seconds. Nobody sits at the dinner table announcing their high value. But some people walk into a room and everyone feels it. The energy shifts and people listen when they talk. The difference isn't what they do, it's what they believe about themselves when nobody's watching, because your value is what's within you, not what you perform. It's not about grand gestures or the tone of your voice. You either think and act this way or you don't. And the reason most guru advice fails is because you can follow the steps perfectly, but if you don't feel it inside, other people won't feel it either. So let's get into the 7 behaviours of people who make others instantly see value in them. Not because they learn to perform, but because they already know who they are. The first behaviour, they talk to themselves the way they talk to people they love. Here's why this matters. Most people operate with 2 completely different voices. The one they use with the world and the one inside their head. And for most of you, those 2 voices are not aligned at all. You treat other people well, yet you tolerate a toxic internal dialogue. You're patient and understanding with others while running a constant criticism of yourself. Everything you did wrong. Everything you should have said differently. Everything that's still not good enough. And here's what people miss. That internal voice doesn't stay internal. It leaks. It shows up in how you carry yourself. It shapes what you accept from other people. Because at some level, you start believing that's what you deserve. Think about someone you know who constantly puts themselves down in a genuinely destructive way. They might be saying, "I'm terrible at this. I always mess things up. Nobody wants to hear what I think." Now notice how people treat them. Most of the time, they take them at their word. Not necessarily because they're cruel, but because people show you how to treat them. And you follow that signal. The way you speak to yourself becomes the instruction manual you give everyone else. And it works the other way too. Think about someone who speaks about themselves with quiet, non-negotiable respect. They don't rush to put themselves down before someone else can. Notice how differently people treat them, without even thinking. What you say to yourself in private becomes the standard other people feel in public. So start paying attention to that internal dialogue, because that conversation is the engine running everything else. The second one, they know exactly who they are, their strengths, weaknesses, and all of it. Now hear me clearly, there's a specific kind of confidence that has nothing to do with being good at everything. It's the confidence of someone who has looked at themselves honestly, who knows what they're genuinely good at and owns it without apology, who knows their weaknesses and isn't completely destroyed by it, who doesn't need to pretend, inflate, or hide because they've already made peace with their full picture of not being perfect. That's self-awareness, and it's rarer than people think. Most people either overestimate themselves in certain areas to protect their ego, or they're so focused on their weaknesses that they can't see their actual strengths clearly. Neither of those is honest, and neither of those gives you a stable foundation. Here's why this matters for how others see you. When someone criticizes you, and trust me, people will criticize you, there's always going to be someone who won't like you, and that's completely okay. If you already know that thing about yourself, their criticism doesn't land the same way. It doesn't knock you off balance. You can hear it, decide if it's accurate, take what's useful, and leave the rest. You don't need to defend yourself desperately or fall apart because your sense of who you are doesn't depend on their opinion. But if you haven't done that honest internal work, if your self-image is fragile or inflated, every criticism feels like an attack. And when you're defensive, people see that. They learn that you can't handle honest feedback. They stop trusting you. They walk on eggshells, or they just lose respect quietly. Let me give you another example. Maybe you make a mistake at work. Someone points it out. Person A immediately deflects, makes excuses, gets visibly uncomfortable. Person B says, "You're right, that was my error. Here's how I'm fixing it," and moves on. Who do you respect more? So understand your self-awareness is what makes the difference. Not perfection, just honesty about who you actually are. The third one is they take care of themselves and others can see it. This is the one people often dismiss because it sounds shallow. Trust me, it's not. Taking care of yourself, how you dress, how you sleep, how you eat, whether you move your body, whether you give yourself rest, is not about vanity. It's a signal, and it signals something incredibly important. It signals that you believe you are worth taking care of. When you don't, when you consistently let yourself go, wear clothes that make you feel bad, skip sleep, and run on empty, you are operating from a core belief that your own well-being isn't a priority. That belief bleeds into everything you do. It dictates how much you ask for, how much you accept, and how you show up in rooms. And let me tell you, you don't need expensive clothes. You don't need to look a certain way. But being clean, put together, and looking like you made an effort for yourself, that changes how you feel inside. When you feel better inside, you carry yourself differently. Other people respond to that. It actually has nothing to do with them judging your outfit. It's not about that at all. It's because they are reading the signal underneath it. They see a person who respects themselves because we instinctively tend to treat people the way they treat themselves. So taking care of yourself isn't a luxury. It is the data you provide to yourself and to the world about how much your own well-being truly matters to you. Moving on to the next behavior, they say what they actually think. If there is one thing that separates people who just hope they have value from the ones who actually know it, it's this. They say what they really think. When you doubt your worth, you treat every conversation like an audition. You nod along with things you hate, change your opinions to fit the room, and exhaust yourself trying to manage how people perceive you. You do it to belong, but it always backfires. And trust me, people can sense when you're pretending to agree or constantly shifting to say what you think they want to hear. People who actually know their value don't need to put on a show. They don't perform. They just say what they think, admit when they don't know something, and disagree without starting a fight. Imagine a group conversation where everyone is nodding along to an opinion just to keep the peace. Then one person calmly says, "I actually see it differently. I think it's more like this." Who do you actually remember and respect from that room? The crowd pleaser trying to please everyone, or that one person who said something real? Understand this, respect isn't earned by blending in. It's earned by standing behind your own words. 5, they don't force connections. This comes down to one core truth. When you actually know your value, you don't need external validation to prove it. But when you're not sure of your worth, every interaction starts to feel like something you need to get right. You find yourself trying to manage how the other person sees you. Here is the problem with that. People don't respond well to feeling responsible for someone else's validation. It makes interactions feel heavy instead of natural. On the other hand, people who are secure, they don't push conversations that aren't flowing. They don't overinvest in one-sided energy, and they don't try to force someone to like them. They simply engage. If the connection is mutual, it develops naturally. If it's not, they let it be what it is. That's exactly what makes interactions feel easier around them. Not because they are inherently magnetic, but because they aren't adding unnecessary pressure to the situation. So understand, real connection doesn't come from chasing it. It comes from two people matching each other's effort naturally, without any force. 6, they're the same person, whether anyone's watching or not. This is the one people can't fake. You can copy almost every other behavior on this list. You can practice speaking more honestly, take better care of yourself, or stop chasing connections. But if you're only doing it when there's an audience, people will feel the act eventually. And when they do, they lose trust fast. Think about the people in your life you respect the most. Almost certainly they are the exact same person regardless of the context. They treat the waiter the same way they treat their boss. They behave the same way when you're completely alone with them as they do when a crowd is watching. That isn't something you can perform. You either live it or you don't. The only way to have this is for your actions to be completely aligned with who you are when no one is watching. It has to become your nature, not an act for an audience, and not for approval, but simply because that's who you are. And when you live that naturally, people instantly feel it as something genuine. And the last one, they don't treat rejection as a definition of their worth. This is where the illusion of performing to be high value completely falls apart. When you rely on external tricks, a single rejection will crush you. If someone doesn't text you back, if you don't get the job, or if someone walks away, you immediately turn inward and ask, "What did I do wrong? Why am I not enough?" You treat their no like a final verdict on your value. But people who operate from inherent worth see rejection completely differently. To them, a no is just information. It means a misalignment of timing, fit, or direction, but it has absolutely zero reflection on who they are. They don't need the world to say yes to feel secure, because they don't look at the world to decide what they are worth in the first place. So those are the 7 behaviours that instantly show your value to others. And if you notice, none of them are about impressing anyone. They aren't techniques or strategies you perform until they stick. They all come back to the exact same thing: how you actually feel about yourself when the room is empty and nobody is watching. If this video made you think differently, hit subscribe to Healthy Mind CEO and let me know in the comments which of these behaviours do you find the most important. And I'll see you in the next video.